Aimed at those who are inexperienced painters, painting for us mere mortals is here to give help and tips. You will see mistakes as a small miniature is blown up full screen. Don't be discouraged by this. Remember, like all skills worth having, the more you do, the better you will become. Hope you enjoy and find this useful. Today's tutorial is one of the monstrous cavalry units of the new Warriors of Chaos book, the Dragon Ogres. They've released these models and they are fine looking models, as you can see there, details all the way around, and essentially they're on the size of a demigriff base, which is slightly smaller than a chariot base. To start with, I've painted the whole model green using the army green from the Army Painter set primer. So he's painted green, and then I've gone over the base with PVA glue and then used a sand mix on the top. Now the Dragon Ogre is part ogre, part dragon, obviously. So the flesh bits I pick out in the base colour Bugman's Flesh. For all the weaponry and the armour, I do a base coat of using lead belcher. For the leatherwork and the woodwork on the model, I use Rhinox hide. This used to be called burnt umber, something like that, or scorched earth, scorched brown. Yeah, scorched brown. So I paint all leatherwork in the dark brown and also the woodwork to give it a depth. I've even gone over the toenails, or I say the toenails, they're toe claws, and then down the spine on his back where the bonework is, or where the bonework will be, I also go over with the scorched brown as well. As these are from the Chaos Army, I decided to use corn red as the base red colour for the fabric on the front of his armour. All the green scales at the moment look flat, and the reason they look flat is because they've had one coat. So I use Bale Tan Green, it's a green wash, to go over all the scales to give that depth where it runs into the grooves, to give it the indication of shading. Once the green wash has been applied to give the depth to the scales, I then do the same with normal oil over the metalwork, give it that worn look and to give it the depth. Then the final wash that I'm going to apply is Reek-scarred flesh, and that goes over the flesh areas, again to give it definition, the muscle definition, and to give it the shading. There are some skulls hanging from his armour, and to give a definition between the living bone and the dead bone, I've used as a base coat Zandri dust for this. Also his teeth. and then Cadian flesh to highlight the flesh. I go over his chest and his arm muscles, picking out all the areas where the light would hit. Also, it can be used to emphasise the size of a muscle by going over the top part across his fingers to give it, again, it's all about the depth of colour that you get in. So you've got a dark flesh underneath, that's been shaded down, and then you hit it with a high or a brighter flesh to give that indication of depth of colour. Now for the bone work, I'm using Ushabti bone for all the bone work. So I'll be doing the skulls on the front, but I'll also be doing the claws and down his back as well. And that, because I've used two different undercoats, going over it with this one overcoat makes those colours different, because they do allow a certain amount of colour from underneath to come through. They're not perfectly opaque. In that way, there is a difference between the living bone of the Dragon Ogre and the dead bone of the skulls hanging on the front of his uniform. I find Wazdaka Red to be the perfect complement for the corn red when highlighting, and then back to the green shade to give a coating for the fins in between the spines on his back. Now I've taken the green straight onto the bone, and I've held the model at a certain angle and let it dry. You see me there, briefly put it upside down. Runefang steel I use to highlight the metalwork and edge the metalwork. That's where you just paint around the blade where it gets its wear and tear, and also any joints on the metal you put a very thin line down, pick out the rivets, and it does make it pop as if that battle axe has been used, and the helmet has taken a few knocks as well. I use leather brown. Now this is one of the Valero colours I've used before. There is an equivalent in Games Workshop to go around the edge of the leather work that I did in, I went to say Scorched Brown there, but it's actually Rhinox Hide now, to give the indication that that leather has had some wear and, you know, is in everyday use and has that depth of colour again. It's all about that depth of colour. The Death World green is the lightest green I own at the moment, so I use that to go around the muscle definition. Oh, cat briefly making an appearance. And you can see in the way that you do with the muscles, for the flesh, you do a similar process, and I'm just painting over the top, picking out the tops of the scales as well. You can see me doing it there slightly, and it will blend in as it dries, but it leaves a residue of colour which indicates that that's where a muscle is, or that's where the scale is, and that's where the light's hitting it. For painting the base, I'm using Steel Legion Drab, which is the new earth colour from Games Workshop, and use a brush that you don't particularly care that much about if you use sand like me, because effectively you're painting a piece of sandpaper and it will wreck your brush, so don't use your nice ones for this. And finally, to pick out the highlights on the base, I've used the dry grey that Games Workshop sell and just overbrush it again with the old brush. So back to the 360 shot of the little beauty, painted to a standard anyone can achieve. I haven't done anything there that anyone else can't do. It's just a case of taking your time, not putting too much paint on at a time, and using the layer system to build it up. Hope you've enjoyed this one, folks, and catch you again soon.